Imagine a world where the center of economic gravity has shifted. For decades, we've looked to the West, to New York, London, and Berlin as the engines of global wealth. But while you were watching the S&P 500, something incredible started happening in the margins. A quiet revolution is taking place, not in the skyscrapers of Manhattan, but in the bustling markets of West Africa, the tech hubs of South Asia, and the oil fields of the Caribbean. Money is moving, and it's moving fast. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we aren't just looking at today's winners, we are traveling forward in time. We are looking at the projected economic landscape of 2026. Why 2026? Because that is the year economists predict a massive divergence. While much of the developed world fights to keep growth above 2%, a handful of nations are sprinting ahead, clocking in growth rates that seem almost impossible in the modern era. We're talking about countries doubling their infrastructure, revolutionizing their energy sectors, and lifting millions out of poverty in record time. We have scoured the latest data from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank to bring you the definitive list of the 10 fastest growing economies in 2026. These aren't just statistics on a spreadsheet. These are the stories of nations rising from conflict, discovering vast natural resources, and pivoting to become the factories of the future. From the African lion economies roaring back to life, to the Asian tigers finding their second wind, this list will surprise you. Who has claimed the #1 spot with a staggering projected growth rate of over 24%? Which Asian giant is set to overtake the global manufacturing crown? And why are so many investors suddenly booking flights to West Africa? Buckle up. We are counting down the top 10 future giants of the global economy. Let's dive in.
Kicking off our list at number 10 is the Pearl of the Orient Seas, the Philippines. Now, you might see a projected growth rate of 5.3% for 2026 and think, that sounds modest. But in a global environment where major economies are struggling to hit 2%, a steady 5.3% expansion is nothing short of impressive. This growth is a testament to resilience. The Philippines has weathered high inflation and global supply chain disruptions to emerge as a consistent performer in Southeast Asia. The economic engine, more than just tourism. When people think of the Philippines, they often think of pristine beaches and tourism. And while that is a huge part of the economy, the real engine driving this 2026 projection is the BPO sector, business process outsourcing. The Philippines has effectively become the call center capital of the world, but it's evolving. It's no longer just customer service, it's high-value IT support, creative design, and software development. This sector pumps billions of dollars into the economy every year, creating a rising middle class with money to spend. The Build Better More effect. Another major driver is infrastructure. The government's massive Build Better More program is in full swing. By 2026, we're expecting to see the completion of major railway projects and airport upgrades that will unclog the notorious Manila traffic and connect rural agricultural hubs to global markets. This spending creates jobs today and efficiency tomorrow. Challenges to watch. It's not all smooth sailing. The Philippines faces the perennial challenge of being in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Natural disasters are a constant economic risk. However, the World Bank sees private consumption, which makes up over 70% of the economy, strengthening significantly by 2026 as inflation stabilizes. The verdict? The Philippines makes our list of the 10 fastest growing economies in 2026 because it is a consumption-led powerhouse. With a young, English-speaking population and a strategic location in Asia, it is positioned to capture a significant share of foreign investment leaving China. Moving to West Africa for our number 9 spot, we land in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, with a robust projected growth rate of 6.5%. For years, this nation was known primarily as the world's top cocoa producer.
If you're eating chocolate right now, there's a good chance the raw materials came from here. But the Côte d'Ivoire of 2026 is diversifying and fast. Beyond the cocoa bean. While agriculture remains the backbone, the government has been aggressive in pushing for agro-processing. Instead of just exporting raw cocoa beans, they're building factories to process cocoa butter and powder domestically. This keeps more value within the country. It's a classic industrialization strategy. Stop selling raw materials and start selling finished goods. The energy and infrastructure boom. But the real secret sauce for 2026 is energy. The discovery of the Baleine oil and gas field is a game changer. By 2026, production is expected to be ramping up significantly, providing cheap domestic energy and a lucrative export revenue stream. Abidjan, the economic capital, is already a bustling hub, often called the Paris of West Africa, and it's seeing a construction boom that rivals any major metropolis. Stability in a volatile region. What makes Côte d'Ivoire stand out in the 10 fastest growing economies in 2026 list is its relative stability. In a region that has seen political turbulence recently, Côte d'Ivoire has remained a reliable anchor for investors. The IMF praises its fiscal reforms and strong private investment climate. Did you know? Côte d'Ivoire is building one of the largest biomass power plants in West Africa, fueled by, you guessed it, cocoa waste. It's a brilliant example of a circular economy, turning agricultural byproduct into electricity to power the grid.
At number 8, we return to Southeast Asia to visit the new factory of the world, Vietnam. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank project Vietnam's growth to hover around 6.6% in 2026. However, it's worth noting that the Vietnamese government is incredibly ambitious, recently setting a target of up to 10%. While we are sticking to the conservative 6.6% for this ranking, even that number is enviable. The China Plus One winner, Vietnam is the biggest beneficiary of the shifting global supply chain. As multinational corporations look to diversify away from China due to trade tensions and rising costs, they are moving next door to Vietnam. Giants like Samsung, Apple, and Intel have poured billions into the country. By 2026, Vietnam isn't just assembling clothes and shoes, it's manufacturing complex electronics, semiconductors, and high-tech components. The digital transformation. The government is also pushing hard for a digital economy. Vietnam has one of the highest internet penetration rates in the region and a young population that is incredibly tech-savvy. The startup scene in Ho Chi Minh City is exploding, with fintech and e-commerce leading the charge. Risks and rewards. The challenge for Vietnam in 2026 will be energy. The country's manufacturing sector is thirsty for power, and the grid has struggled to keep up, leading to occasional blackouts. To hit that 6.6% or higher, Vietnam needs to massively upgrade its energy infrastructure, transitioning rapidly to renewables to satisfy the green manufacturing demands of Western buyers. Why it's on the list? Vietnam is a textbook example of export-led growth. It's following the same path South Korea and Taiwan took decades ago. With a highly disciplined workforce and pro-business policies, Vietnam is locking in its place as a top-tier global economy. Coming in at number 7 is a country that might surprise you, Niger. With a projected growth rate of 6.7% for 2026, Niger is undergoing a massive economic transformation. Historically, one of the world's poorest nations, Niger is on the brink of an oil boom that is rewriting its financial destiny. The Black Gold Rush. The primary driver here is the Niger-Benin oil pipeline. This massive infrastructure project allows Niger, a landlocked country, to export its crude oil through the port of Benin. By 2026, oil production is expected to be near full capacity, generating revenue that dwarfs anything the country has seen before. We are talking about export volumes increasing 5-fold compared to just a few years ago. Uranium and agriculture. But it's not just oil. Niger is also one of the world's largest producers of uranium, a critical resource as the world turns back to nuclear energy for low-carbon power. As global demand for uranium spikes, Niger stands to benefit. Additionally, the government is investing these resource revenues back into agriculture to improve food security in the Sahel region. The context of growth. It is important to understand that this high growth rate comes from a low base. When a small economy starts exporting oil, the percentage jump in GDP is massive. The challenge for Niger in 2026 will be managing this resource curse, ensuring the wealth trickles down to the population rather than fueling corruption or inflation. A future giant. If managed correctly, 2026 could be the year Niger solidifies its foundation for long-term prosperity. It is a high-risk, high-reward economy that investors are watching closely. Just south of Niger lies our number 6 entry, Benin. Projected to grow at a rapid 7.0% in 2026, Benin is quietly becoming a logistics and service hub for West Africa. The gateway to West Africa. Remember that pipeline we just mentioned for Niger? Well, it ends here in Benin. Benin collects transit fees for every barrel of oil that flows through to the coast. But Benin isn't just sitting back and collecting tolls. The port of Cotonou is undergoing massive modernization to become the primary trade gateway for the region, competing directly with ports in Nigeria and Togo. Cotton and construction. Benin is also Africa's leading cotton producer. The government has introduced reforms to modernize the textile industry, encouraging local processing of cotton rather than just exporting the raw fluff. On top of that, a construction boom is transforming the country's infrastructure, from roads to digital networks. Fiscal discipline. What impresses the IMF about Benin is its fiscal management. The government has been very effective at digitizing tax collection and improving public spending efficiency. This creates a stable environment that attracts foreign direct investment. The 2026 outlook. By 2026, Benin aims to be more than just a transit point. It wants to be a destination. With high growth, low inflation relative to its neighbors, and a strategic coastal location, Benin is proving that you don't need vast oil reserves of your own to boom. You just need smart policy and location, location, location. Breaking into the top 5, we have the Singapore of Africa, Rwanda. Tying for the spot with a projected growth of 7.1%, Rwanda continues to be the gold standard for development in Africa. This is a country that has rebounded from a tragic past to become a beacon of innovation and governance. Mice and services. Rwanda's strategy is unique. It isn't relying on oil or vast mineral wealth. It's relying on services, specifically mice, meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions. Kigali has positioned itself as the premier conference destination on the continent. By 2026, the sector is expected to be fully recovered from the pandemic and expanding rapidly, filling hotels and creating thousands of service jobs. A tech hub. Rwanda is also betting big on technology. It was one of the first countries to use drones for medical deliveries. In 2026, the Kigali Innovation City is set to be a thriving ecosystem for tech startups and African entrepreneurs. The government's investment in high-speed internet and digital literacy is paying off, creating a knowledge-based economy. Tourism and conservation. High-end ecotourism remains a massive earner. The famous mountain gorillas attract wealthy tourists from around the globe, and the government's strict conservation policies ensure this resource is sustainable. Why 7.1%? The 7.1% projection for 2026 reflects the maturity of Rwanda's long-term vision. It's the result of decades of planning, stability, and ease of doing business. Rwanda is one of the easiest places in Africa to start a company, and in 2026, the world will continue to reward that efficiency.
Also clocking in with a 7.1% growth projection is the resource-rich nation of Guinea. If Rwanda is the brain, Guinea is the muscle. This country sits on the world's largest reserves of bauxite, the primary ore used to make aluminum. The Simandou project. But the real story for 2026 is Simandou. This is the world's largest untapped high-grade iron ore deposit. After years of legal battles and delays, the project is moving forward. The development of Simandou involves building mines, hundreds of kilometers of railway, and a new deep-water port. This is arguably the biggest mining infrastructure project on the planet right now. The ripple effect. By 2026, the construction phase will be peaking and initial exports may be on the horizon. This injects billions into the local economy. Furthermore, Guinea is investing in hydroelectric power to process some of its minerals domestically, adding value before export. The risks. Guinea has faced political instability in recent years. The challenge for 2026 is ensuring that the mining boom translates into stability and living standards for the average citizen. But purely from a GDP perspective, the sheer scale of mineral wealth being unlocked makes Guinea a growth juggernaut.
At number 3, we have the second most populous nation in Africa, Ethiopia. With a projected growth of 7.1%, Ethiopia is a giant waking up. After a difficult period of internal conflict and debt restructuring, the IMF sees 2026 as a year of resurgence. The liberalization of the economy. For decades, Ethiopia was a closed economy, but that is changing. The government is opening up key sectors like telecommunications and banking to foreign investment. Safaricom has entered the market, and a stock exchange is being established. By 2026, these reforms will be bearing fruit, unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit of over 120 million people. Manufacturing and industry. Ethiopia aims to be the light manufacturing hub of Africa. With low labor costs and cheap electricity provided by the massive Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, it is attracting textile and garment manufacturers. By 2026, the dam is expected to be fully operational, exporting power to neighbors and fueling domestic industry. Ethiopian Airlines. We cannot talk about Ethiopia without mentioning Ethiopian Airlines, the most successful carrier in Africa. It turns Addis Ababa into a global transit hub, connecting Asia, Europe, and the Americas to the African continent. This logistics dominance fuels trade and tourism. The resilience factor. Despite challenges, the sheer size of Ethiopia's internal market drives growth. 7.1% growth in a country this large creates a massive amount of new wealth and opportunity.
We have reached the runner-up spot, and this is significant because unlike the smaller economies on this list, this is a global superpower. At number 2 is India. The Asian Development Bank and other major institutions project India's growth to hit 7.2% in fiscal year 2026. For an economy worth nearly $4 trillion, growing at over 7% is absolutely massive. It contributes more to global growth than almost any other nation. The Make in India push. India is firing on all cylinders. The government's Make in India initiative, combined with production-linked incentives, PLI, is turning the country into a manufacturing titan. Apple is making iPhones here, Tesla is eyeing entry, and defense manufacturing is soaring. Infrastructure overhaul. If you visit India in 2026, it will look different than it did in 2020. The pace of infrastructure construction is staggering. Miles of highways, new metro systems in dozens of cities, and new airports are being built every day. This physical transformation reduces the cost of doing business and boosts productivity. The digital stack. India's digital public infrastructure is the envy of the world. From the UPI payment system to digital IDs, the formalization of the economy is bringing millions of small businesses into the banking system. This unleashes credit and consumption. Demographics as destiny. India has the world's largest young population. In 2026, this demographic dividend is in its prime phase. These young people are working, earning, and spending, driving domestic consumption in a way that aging economies in the West and East Asia simply cannot match. Why number 2? India is the most stable large-scale growth story in the world right now. It is the engine that will likely power the global economy for the next decade.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for. The #1 fastest growing economy in the world for 2026 is South Sudan. The IMF projects a mind-bending growth rate of 24.3%. The context, a rebound story. Now, before you pack your bags to move to Juba, we need to apply some context. South Sudan is coming off a very low base. The economy has been battered by years of civil conflict, and more recently, the rupture of its critical oil export pipeline, which runs through war-torn Sudan. Why the explosion in 2026? The 24.3% figure represents a massive recovery. By 2026, the damaged pipelines are expected to be repaired and fully operational. Because South Sudan is almost entirely dependent on oil, it accounts for nearly all of its exports. Turning the tabs back on results in a statistical explosion of GDP. Peace dividend. If the peace agreements hold and the security situation stabilizes, South Sudan has immense potential beyond oil. It has fertile land and the White Nile, giving it the potential to be a breadbasket for the region. But for 2026, the story is almost entirely about the resumption of oil flows. A note of caution. This #1 spot highlights the volatility of emerging markets. It is growth born of recovery, not necessarily structural transformation like India or Vietnam. However, for the people of South Sudan, a 24% jump in GDP means the return of government revenue, salaries, and hopefully development funds. It is a sign of hope that the worst economic days might be in the rearview mirror.
So there you have it, the 10 fastest growing economies in 2026. From the oil recovery in South Sudan to the tech dominance of India, from the factories of Vietnam to the conference halls of Rwanda. What does this list tell us? It tells us that opportunity is everywhere. Africa is not just a continent of potential, it is a continent of action, dominating half of this list. Asia continues to be the industrial and consumer engine of the world. Diversification is key, whether it's diversifying away from oil in the Middle East or diversifying supply chains away from China. As we look toward 2026, these are the markets that will be making headlines. These are the countries where the next generation of billionaires might be made and where the global middle class is expanding most rapidly. Which of these economies surprised you the most? Do you think India can sustain its massive growth? Is South Sudan's recovery for real? Let us know in the comments below. We love reading your insights. If you found value in this deep dive, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve on global economics, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. This is Voyage, and we'll see you in the next video.